Okay, now we're going to talk about linear inequalities. So some things you need to look for, some clue words to clue you into what inequality symbol to use. Less than, typically they're going to use is a less than. Is greater than, it's going to be for your greater than sign. Greater than or equal to has a few more on the list. Is greater than or equal to at least, meaning you starting small but you can get bigger. Minimum, you can go over that value, okay? It's the lowest you can have. As long as you're higher than that lowest value, you're good. And then less than or equal to, obviously less than or equal to, no more than, you have a budget. You cannot go over that value. Same with maximum. You're at the highest you can go. You can only go down from there. All right, so now we're going to look at a table. So we've got 3 points on a boundary line are given. The boundary line is not part of the solution set. Boundary line is not part of the solution set. So they're telling you that anything on the line cannot be. So that's going to clue you in. It's either going to be less than or a greater than. Okay? So what I'm going to do, and they also clued you in that 1 point belongs to the solution set. So what I'm going to do is, since I have a table of values, I'm going to use my calculator to get the equation for my line, and then I'm going to determine which symbol I can use based on which side this point falls in. If it falls above the line, it's going to be greater than. If this point falls below the line, it's going to be less than. So I'm going to go to stat enter, and I'm going to type in my table. -2, 1, 4. -7, -1, 5. Stat over option 4 because we are talking about a line. And I'm going to write A equals 2, B equals -3, which would make my equation Y equals 2x minus 3. Okay, so I'm going to go to my calculator. I'm going to graph this line because I need to see what side of the line 0, 1 falls into. So I'm going to hit graph. Okay, so if I graphed 0, 1, that would be right here on the y-axis, which is above my line. So if it's in the solution set, that means that I have to shade above the line so that 0, 1 is in the shaded region. So I am going to be using my greater than because 0, 1 is a point above the line. Okay, and for it to be in a solution, it has to be in that shaded, so I'm going to use greater than. All right, looking at your graph. So there's two things. I'm going to pick off points off of this line so that I can use my calculator to get an equation, and so I'm going to pick off good points. So I've got -3, 2, I've got 0, 1, and I've got 3, 0. So again, I'm going to clear my calculator, and this is only to find the line. I'm not using it for the inequality. I'm going to look at my shading in just a minute. So stat enter, -3, 0, 3, 2, 1, 2, 1, enter, 0, enter, stat over 4. So I got A equals, that would be a -1/3, and B is equal to 1, which makes my equation Y equals -1/3 x plus 1. But this is not a line, it's got shading. So if you notice, you are shaded above, shade above. Now, is it a solid line or a dashed line? And it's not solid line. Okay. So if it's not a solid line, it can't have a solid line in the symbol. So that takes out the greater than or equal to and the less than or equal to. So now I've got to pick between a greater than or a less than. Well, less than means the shading is under the line. Greater than means the shading is over the line. Since I have shading over or above the line, I have to say greater than. So my equation is going to be Y is greater than -1/3 x plus 1. All right, verbal. Michael was given a gift card for $25. Bracelets cost $2.50 and necklaces cost $3. Write an inequality that represents the number of bracelets and number of necklaces that Michael can purchase. Okay, so I know it's going to be $2.50 times the number of bracelets plus $3 times the number of necklaces, and I know that my total has to be 25. So now I've got to think, can I go over his gift card? Can Michael spend more than his gift card? And hopefully you said no, that his gift card, he is limited to $25, which means he cannot go over. That is it's a maximum. He can spend a max of $25. So since he cannot go over $25, he has to be a less than or equal to. All right, solving inequalities. Solving inequalities, you are going to have to work these out by hand. So you're going to have to look. PEMDAS, parentheses. We have parentheses on both sides, so we're going to have to distribute. So we're going to have 17 minus 3x, and then we're going to multiply again because I've got a 4. I've got to multiply by -3, so that would be -12. It's greater than or equal to, so I've got 3 times x. I also have 3 times a 9, which would be 27. Next, you're going to move all your like terms to the same side. So if it has a variable with it, you want to move all your variables to the same side. So I'm going to move this 3x over here. That changes the sign. And now I'm going to move, I've got 2 constants I'm going to move over here. So that's going to change the sign of the 17. And then I've got a -12 that I also need to move over, which is going to change the sign. And so now I'm going to combine all my like terms. So I have 2 -3x's, which would be -6x is greater than or equal to. Now I'm going to combine up. I've got a 27 plus another 12, and then I've got a -17 or -17 for a total of 22. And so now, since all my terms are on the same side and combined, I'm ready to divide by my coefficient, which would be -6. So 22 divided by -6, I'm going to write that as a fraction, which would be x, and this would be -11/3. Now, first thing I'm going to look at, did I divide by a negative number? Yes, I did. The number I divided by was negative, so I have to remember that that sign has to flip. So it's no longer going to be greater than or equal to, it's going to be negative. I'm sorry, it's going to be less than or equal to. That's the only difference. So for inequalities, you have to divide and solve by hand, whereas in your calculator, you can use y1, y2, and find the intersection point. Okay, now you are going to go into writing and solving systems of equations. So go ahead and flip your book and get ready for the next video.